So I'm going to start in a seated position. I have got a really large moth on the wall that's come to see me this evening. It's just out of shot. And I've obviously got a bright light there up on the ceiling, so it might decide to start fluttering around. So if you hear a little squeal, that will be me panicking because there's a moth fluttering around. I sit up nice and tall, and I'm going to try to bring myself into a pose that's called Siddhasana. So at the moment I'm sitting in Sukhasana, which is a slight different variation. I'm going to cross the legs at the shins with the feet nice and wide, and the front shin bone is more or less following the front line of the mat. And then I'm going to sit out. I'm just going to roll a little bit to one side, then the other, just moving the flesh around a little bit to get onto the sitting bones, and then I'm going to rest. I'll be here for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to change the legs over. It's easy as that. So I have got the hands gently sitting on top of the thighs, on top of the knees. So it's giving her a little bit more weight, opening out the hips and the groins a little bit. Sitting relatively upright, not super worried about that being the most upright you can be. Just want you to be comfortable and breathing easily. Then I'm going to untangle the legs and cross them over the other way. And again, placing the hands and the arms to give a little extra weight. So you can feel a little springiness in the muscles in the hips and the groin areas and the buttocks. So having my hands is just adding a little bit extra weight against that resistance. I'm trying to resist the urge of holding my breath. That's all. Just taking it nice and simply. Relaxing. Nice belly breath. And then I'm going to release from there. Going to come into banana pose. So as we move my props out to the side, knees high, hands behind, chin towards the chest, roll the spine down. Allow yourself to float the arms up towards the sky. Lengthen the legs out down the center line of the mat. Put the feet as close together as is comfortable. Let the arms drift over towards the ground. I'm going to take hold of my right wrist and shimmy the shoulders to the left. Do the same, shimmying the feet over to the left as well. And doing my best to keep both shoulders on the ground. Turning the head very slightly to the left, making sure that I can feel both halves of my pelvis touching the ground. So it's easy to come into this and lift the right side of the pelvis off of the ground to the point where really you're just sitting on one side of the pelvis. There's no connection at all. So trying to let that drop down, and you need to be relatively close to the ground for that drop to happen. So if you've stretch yourself, you kind of limiting the chance of getting the drop. Bring the legs back into the center. Shoulders come back onto the center line. Can change the hand grip over. So coming over to my right side this time, shoulders flat to the floor. Legs gently going across. Just wiggling through that pelvis a little bit to get ourselves as flat to the ground as we can be. So a nice, easy, gentle stretch down the muscles down the side of the body, but also giving us a bit of lateral load into the spine and opening up the shoulder joints as well. So doing more than it looks. Doing our best to find any tension in the body and letting go. Generally, as you release in one place, it kind of shifts. Maybe not so strong, but you're sort of chasing it around that elusive total relaxation. We'll come back into the center again. Shoulders and the legs. And we'll just slide the feet back in. Now I'm going to roll onto my right side. Use the hands to press into the floor to come back up. I'm going to pick up my block as I rise. And I'm going to come into deer pose. So let's keep that behind me, so it's easier to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to take my left leg and bring that underneath so that my foot is out to the side a little bit. Lean out to the left, bring the right knee into a bend so the shin passes through the arch of the foot, the toes point backwards, and then I'm doing my best to get both sitting bones down on the block. And sitting up nice and tall. Again, you can just have the hands on the lap. You can have them to the side. You can take a hand mudra if you are into that kind of practice. Close the eyes if it helps. We're trying to allow the pelvis to level itself out. So working out what muscles in the spine do we need to release? What do we need to hold? How can we open the hips a little more by relaxing into it? Letting gravity work for us. Change over to the other side. Do make the effort to get both knees on the floor. And in my body, I just need a tiny little bit of assist on this side to help level out the pelvis a bit more. Okay, and we're going to move back to the first side and take deer pose into the fallen version. So exactly the same. And what I'm going to do is then move my left leg a little bit further out, so I've maximized the sort of opening base that I've got. I'm going to turn my body gently towards this left leg and walk the hands out, comfortable distance, and then walk back into the center. Now, if you can get low enough, you can bring your head down onto the back of your hands. You could put a block underneath there, or a bolster, or brick. Put a brick on end. You could lie across the top of the bolster. All lots of opportunities there. This is quite strong on the hips and the thighs. Going to periodically look up and check the time. So you can just stay there and enjoy relaxing down and trying to let those joints release, let muscles soften. Now, we don't do this one too often, so again, the nervous system is going to be a little bit more on high alert. So the relaxation response is a little bit further away. It generally takes a little longer to find, but it will be there somewhere. Draw the belly in a little bit, press down into the hands, and lift up as we exhale. And no surprises as we take it over to the other side. So just unpeeling the legs, so I need to stretch them out a little bit. Move around nice and gently. Just moving that right knee as far out as you can, but still keeping the combination of shin through the arch of the foot. Turn yourself towards that bent right knee, lengthen the body out. And when you get as low as you feel comfortable to move to, you just bring yourself back into the center line. And let yourself to rest and see, first of all, how that feels compared to the previous side. And then Allow yourself to sink into tight muscles and allow the mind to settle with the body. So focusing on your breath and your body, letting all the other distractions leave, and just sinking down. And we'll press down into the ground again as we just draw the belly in lightly and let ourselves lift up. Now I'm going to move into child's pose, so not too much of a move, but I'm going to use my bolster underneath my chest. Take the knees nice and wide, so it's almost a restorative. So if you've got a bolster, that's great. If you haven't, then you can still take child's pose, but just allow yourself to maybe bring the hands underneath the forehead, maybe lift yourself up on some props a little bit. So with the bolster, I'm able to take advantage of letting the body lie flat against the bolster and sink down. So there's a slightly different effect on the hips and knees, and a very different effect on the head and the neck and the spine. Okay, going to move slowly from there. And I'm going to come into bridge pose. I'm going to use my bolster again. So you could use bricks and blocks, whatever feels good. Let's make sure that's nice and level. Come down slowly onto the spine. And I'm going to take the bolster for the moment and just slide that underneath the my bottom, so just in front of my tailbone. Get my feet to a nice comfortable distance, so wider than perhaps you would in a regular hatha class in bridge pose. And we'll take a little breath, press the arms down lightly and lift. I'm going to roll the bolster, in my case, underneath my bottom, but you could be placing bricks and blocks as stack. You want to not be as high as the full potential of your body would allow. Something less. You decide whether it's a lot less or a little less. You could just do this with one block, wouldn't be a problem. And we're going to let the arms hang out to the side. And then inhale the hands up and drop them towards the back of the mat. Now, ideally, you want your arms to be pretty close to touching the floor. So for most of us, we have to kind of take the arms out wider than the shoulders so that we've got some chance of getting at least the forearms down into the floor. And I'm going to try and let the legs roll towards the center. So for me, I use probably all of the width of the mat before my legs start to feel like they're drawing in. And with my arms in this position, it's kind of flaring the chest a little more towards the sky and opening up the body. I'm going to do my best to relax my back and shoulder muscles and my belly muscles. And get a sense of the spine gently rolling down towards the ground, whilst keeping my arms and the shoulders in the same place. So I'm working against the curves, the natural curves in the spine, flattening them out with sort of weight in the top half, and flattening the lower half of the spine by releasing the muscles. And if you let the body sink too fast, too quickly, a nervous reaction will tense up, and it gets a feeling of going through the cycle again of releasing. So that's fine, it's going to happen. Just allow it to be as natural as possible. Understand that it happens and let yourself breathe through it. And say as many times as you need. And so I start to lift myself back out of this. First of all, just roll the arms back down alongside the body so that I can bring the feet a little more underneath me. Press down through the legs lightly and then use my hands to just move the bolster or the blocks, whatever you've used, out of the way. Stay there just for a moment. Feel the difference in the spine and the back of the head, back of the neck. And we'll collectively roll onto the right side. Use the hands to press in the floor to lift up. So we're going to come up nice and slow. And going to move into a seated posture called butterfly pose. So I'm going to use that block underneath my bottom and bring the soles of the feet in towards me and just let the knees hang out. So everything I really want to focus on is keeping the feet together. And in my case, I'm going to start this with my hands, just holding on to my ankle shins. You can really place them wherever you want. When you started to let the knees hang out a little bit, I'm going to drop the chin and they're going to round the spine, different to leaning forwards. The pelvis tilts back a little bit. The spine rounds a lot more through the sort of middle section. And then they get the roundness in the upper part of the spine, letting the head hang and the head drop. I'm going to continue to let myself sink forwards and see where my body takes me. So if you're more mobile and have a longer range of movement in your spine, hips, etc., you might find that you very naturally just sink forwards and down and get very close to the floor. Some of us are going to remain very high. Some of us will just take a bit of time to get where we're going. Just trying to keep the breath nice and soft. So as you sink lower, you have to change where you breathe into a little bit. You can breathe into the back of the ribs. And I'm going to use the hands to press into the floor, to draw myself back up. I'm going to use the hands again to bring the legs in. Now I'm just going to come up onto all fours. I'm going to move my block out and take my bolster towards the front of the mat. I'm going to use that as a support in probably about 6 minutes time. So from all fours, I'm going to come into a lunge. So I'm going to draw the right foot forwards and start with the knee above the ankle. Tuck the toe on the back foot underneath and slide that leg as far as you comfortably can back. And then going to lift up gently onto the fingertips. Forearms come onto that front thigh. I'm going to let myself sink into the front leg. So where you hold your head is really up to you. Just letting that knee travel forwards a little bit. I don't really want it going much further past the big toe. And if you started with the knee above the ankle and the back knee as far back as you can allow it to go, that kind of minimizes the amount of forward movement you get. You're trying to let the hips sink downwards. And it does get a little bit wobbly as the foot gets a bit fatigued. So if you do need to bring your fingertips to the floor just to steady, not a problem. You can let your body lean into that front thigh as well. So that's a nice way of kind of adapting a little bit from the sort of higher version. You're still trying to release the abdominal muscles and the hips down. And then we're going to slowly bring ourselves back onto all fours. Kind of an unpeeling process there. Stretch out the legs. Don't normally have to do that, but it feels good. And then we'll bring the left foot through. Again, knee over ankle. Slide the back foot away. Allow myself to come up a little higher. There we go. And sink in again. One of the advantages of having the forearms on the thigh is that you can let the hips and the chest sink a little bit, so you get more stretching to the shoulders. They start lifting up towards the ceiling. And then I'll move away from that as well. Back into the first side. But this time I'm going to take the leg forward and wide. So it's the right leg comes forwards. Then let the foot hang out to the side a little bit and let the knee hang out as well. And then I'm going to just bring the bolster underneath to place my forearms. So the idea is that I get a little lower. You could do this without any bolster and come straight down onto the floor. That provides you with a much bigger stretch into the groin and the hip joint. But I'm aware that I don't want to work super hard this evening. It's very hot here at the moment, very humid. The muscles are fairly loose from the heat. So rather than pushing myself into a position that happens just because my body's in a different kind of state, I'll just hold back a little bit. Again, you can, if you're using the bolster, you can let those shoulders hang down, the head can hang down, wherever it feels good. And then we'll swap over. Taking the leg forwards gently, toes turning out a little bit, letting the knee naturally open out to the side, and then bringing my forearms and elbows into position. Around a little wriggle around to get myself super comfortable. Working on the second side. And we'll slowly move out of that one as well. So I'm going to move whatever props I've got towards the front of the mat. So I've got plenty of space to the side. We're moving to down dog, so fingers fairly close towards the front of the mat if you're sort of a longish person. Pull the shoulders back a little bit. Press away from the floor, tuck the toes underneath, draw the belly in, and then we lift the knees and glide back up into our down dog. So we're going to let the legs walk out a little bit. And try and lift the thighs as I press the heel towards the back of the mat. So I'm going to contract it upwards in towards the groin. And just make sure that I can fire them up. So you're probably able to see the sort of texture of the muscles a little bit moving around. There's a press back into the heel towards the back of the mat rather than down. And I'll lift that front thigh up and then release. I'm going to take a forward fold from here and walk the feet in towards the center line. So I'm going to keep the hips nice and high, legs pretty straight, move into about the middle of the mat, have the feet about hip distance apart, walk the fingers in the rest of the way to the body, and let myself hang over the thighs, trying to get the weight even between the feet, front, back, and sides. Bring the hands onto the shins. I let myself lift up halfway, draw the chest forwards, tailbone back, broad across the front of the chest, keep the head in line with the rest of the spine. Allow myself to hinge down, drawing the belly in and folding my body onto the thighs. A little bit different to just dropping down. Hands come onto the shins again, lifting up, lengthening the body, drawing the tummy in, and using your ribs and thighs as close as you can together. Back in again. Allow yourself to lengthen the spine. Moving down. We're going to bring the hands onto the hips and take our first lift up. Now, as you do, allow yourself to take the hands behind the back and just interlace the fingers and draw them down towards the floor. I'm going to take a moment just to let the shoulder blades squeeze together naturally. So really the front of the chest releasing rather than being pulled open. We're going to draw the ribs down towards the hips. So it stops the chest flaring up. There's just a little bit of a change in the posture. Or exhale forwards slowly, softening the knees a little as we come into that. Try to keep the chest nice and long. Fold the body in as we had before. Let the head come down and then start to take the hands towards the sky and then over towards the front of the mat. Just working slowly in. A few more breaths. Pressing the feet down. And then we'll release the hands back down to the floor. going to set myself back into the down dog position. Stretching the legs, pressing the hands down. Now I'm going to see if I can lift the fingertips away from the floor and press the palm of the hand down a little more into the ground. So I'm really going to concentrate on that. You can even have a little look-see. See what we're doing. I'm going to hold that for just a few more seconds. Still trying to breathe. You feel that tighten into the shoulders a little bit as you do that as well. And then we'll release into a plank. The fingertips come back to the floor. These come down to the ground. Swing the feet out to the side. I'm going to take one block with me in the process. Place that underneath. So lift up. Take a little perch into Dandasana. So gradually drawing the feet towards me, and I'm trying to lengthen the thighs away and the hamstrings as well. So it's kind of a mind connection. You know, the body's naturally going to pull in, so we want to try and naturally go the opposite way, or unnaturally. Hands to the side. Again, just that nice flat open chest, so we get this to be broad and open, making it easy to breathe. And then from there, we're going to relax, and we're going to take the left foot underneath, out to the side, knee pointing forwards. You're going to bring the right foot in high, and allow myself to just tilt the pelvis forwards, taking my left hand up, I'm going to turn to the right, brace the front arm and leg. The rear hand comes behind onto the floor, just behind the hip a little bit. And we're going to try and lift the spine up out of the pelvis. And also have two sitting bones in contact. You can look over the rear shoulder if it's easy to do so in the neck. Just make sure that your head is lifting towards the sky, so you've got plenty of space. You can alternatively have your chin just following where your heart is pointing, which is somewhere out towards the right side and forwards. Release from here. Untangle the legs into the opposite side. Let ourselves lift up, tilting the pelvis forwards a little bit, and rotating round. Just a light bit of counterlever, arm and leg. Rear shoulder to look over if it's available. Two sitting bones on the floor, shoulders relaxed and wide. Belly's drawn in a little bit. Try and have the front leg foot to the flat to the floor. So pressing down. It does depend a little bit on the range of motion you've got available to you in the hip joint. But assuming that your knee is able to point up towards the sky, then the flat foot close into the body should be almost available to you. Release from there and untangle the legs. And I'm going to do the same again. Bring that foot in, but this time I'm going to turn to my left. So this is an open chest. First one was a closed version. And I'm going to draw the belly in, sit up nice and tall, two sitting bones, front foot on the floor. Not bracing the leg and the arm, just rotating the body around as I exhale. And then release from there. And we'll take it across to the last side. So front knee pointing forwards, Fall flat to the floor, a little tilt the pelvis, rotate to the right. Belly drawn in, pressing the sitting bones down, crown of the head lifting. And release from that as well. You take a seated forward fold, so legs come forward. So let's just wander off of that block for a moment and push that towards the front of the mat. So if you can draw the flesh out, allow the feet to come together, a little bend in the knees, lift up through the body, hands onto the shins, hinge at the hips and draw the chest forward. So I'm going to slide the hands along the shins, and then I'm going to draw my body forwards, not downwards. So try and keep the legs lengthening out through the heels and draw the belly in and send the tailbone back. And then release. And I'm going to turn around so my head is towards the front end of the mat, lying down on the ground. And then I'm going to lie onto my left side. I'm going to take both hands out. So right hand, sorry, on my left side. Lengthen the legs out. So my left hand is on top. Now you can put the block underneath your head if you find that being in this position is a bit much for the neck. You can give it a little support like that, not a problem. The top leg, I'm just going to slide forwards. I'm going to come into cat's tail. So a comfortable distance forwards, maybe a foot or so, and the foot just resting gently on the ground, straight leg. The bottom leg lengthening out. I'm going to bend the knee and draw the heel towards my buttock. And I'm going to use my foot to kind of walk the foot in a little closer. You want to be careful that as you bend that bottom leg, that your leg doesn't actually move forwards inadvertently. And then I'm going to slide the top hand across the arm of the lower limb, across the chest, roll the shoulders down towards the ground, and see if I can get my hand and my foot to connect, which, since everything is a little bit warm this evening, is a bit slippy. Coming into the cat's tail, letting that shoulder release. And then we'll release out of that. Roll over, take it to the second side. So easing in, using the block again if we need to. One hand on top of the other, the arms straight out in front of the chest. Top leg slides forwards a comfortable distance, making sure the body was aligned on the center line as we started. We'll start to draw the bottom leg back. As I exhale, and just walk the foot in closer towards the bottom. When you feel ready, let's slide that top hand across. Allow yourself to find that foot somewhere. And then letting the shoulder take its time to get closer to the floor. Cells are released from there as well. And going to move into Shavasana. So I'm peeling my body slowly. You can continue to use the block under the back of the head. You could, if you've got the bolster or the rolled up blankets, you could put those underneath the back of the knees if that felt good. If you don't fancy moving around a lot, the Shavasana pose is the easiest one to roll into from that. And when you get yourself settled, I'm just going to wriggle out the spine a little bit, shoulders, back of the neck, making those little adjustments to get a little flatter to the floor as you close your eyes. And into licking the lips to soften the jaw. We'll allow ourselves to start to breathe in a little deeper. And wriggle the toes and fingers gently. Allow the wrists and the ankles to just take some rotations as well. We generally feel a little bit more connected to the room. Let ourselves have a big stretch, wherever that looks like. And then guide the legs in towards the body for a little hug. And finally, as you exhale, the next breath, roll gently onto your right side and stay there for a moment. Taking a couple of breaths in here. And then on the next exhalation, we use the hands to just press gently down into the side of the mat to lift up. And bring ourselves back into a posture that is easy to sit in, so it doesn't have to be identical to the shape that I'm making. You can use props if you wish. And then getting the spine nice and long, we'll bring the hands in towards our heart. We'll take a moment to close our eyes as we breathe in deeper. And a very slow exhalation begins as we drop the chin. Let the belly draw to the spine and we can begin to bow gracefully to the floor, beginning our practice for the evening. And as the breath comes naturally back into the body, we'll let that build the spine for us until the head can lift, the eyes can open. Namaste. Thank you for joining me. Hope you enjoyed a relaxing yin yang class, and see you on the mat again soon.